What's going on, champs and champettes? It's FireMonkey here, back on the only up map, but this time we're not making a whole entire 50-minute YouTube video about it, and instead we're just going back to our normal, commentary topics where we're talking about a ramble type thing for a little bit of time. Now, for today's YouTube video, I wanted to talk about augments, because augments are a thing that have been a permanent feature in Fortnite recently, and have been really nice to see in the game. However, despite this, they've become somewhat of a little bit of, just kind of a nuisance in a way, right? Because they are, in the game, they're cool to have and everything. It adds a roguelike element to Fortnite that wasn't really there before, but at the exact same time, they're not the best items ever, right? There's a lot of augments that released in the first season that we don't have anymore, such as, like infinite fuel and vehicles or whatnot, that I would prefer entirely over the augments we have now, right? Because nowadays, we have augments that are just kind of like very iffy to me. Like, oh, you get more heavy ammo whenever you open a chest, but the only item that takes heavy ammo is the explosive repeater. Oh, you're going to get yourself, the final 3 bullets of your gun doing more damage with an SMG, when it's like, okay, so by that point, if, I'm on my final 3 bullets, who knows if I'm even at a spot where I would be doing good enough to, be able to eliminate that person with those final 3 shots. So it's like a little bit of just an oddity in a way, right? It's a little bit of, okay, there are, some interesting little mechanics and stuff they're trying to do here, but some of the things that they're trying to do and some of the main augments that we get to focus on don't really have a good purpose, at least not in this season, right? And it makes me think back to the spy games, because augments are a revamped version of the spy games augments, and if you guys remember back then, there were a lot of very, very interesting ones that had actually released. And I get that, Spy Games was an LTM, so it makes sense for some of those augments to be a little bit more goofy and all over the place, but they were genuinely some really cool ideas, like being able to just get a jetpack right away, right? A jetpack's an item that we haven't really seen in a few seasons now, but would be nice to see in the game. And even other features such as literally giving you the ability to double jump. I mean, imagine you're just playing normal Battle Royale, right? And instead of getting like low gravity or something like that, you get the ability to quite literally double jump around the island, right? Of course, it would be a little bit weird to see how that would balance into the main actual gameplay and everything, and of course this is the core mode Battle Royale, but at the same time it is a lot of things that show opportunities that were available to you, and even if they didn't want to add like the whole entire extra movement of a double jump mechanic into an augment system, they could still do other things, because for example, one of the other augments I can kind of remember from the Spy Games area, or I guess tech back then, was stuff like when you're crouching, you move at walking/sprinting speed, right? That is such a small augment in the game, right? That is such a small little change that yes, it is a interesting gameplay advantage, they could make it rare or whatever, but it still would be a lot more chosen when compared to something like, oh, you now get more heavy ammo, but there's no snipers in the loot pool or anything like that, right? It just feels like, the new augment system is a very watered down version of the tech system from before, and doesn't feature a lot of the cooler and more unique augments that they could have, and when they do release a unique augment that is pretty cool, they kind of just yoink it, right? They yoink it in the next season, and then it's just kind of forgotten, and we get a dumbed down version of it, because for example, if you remember the glider redeploy augment, that is set to return very soon, however in a very changed format that I don't really like at all. They're changing it up, so instead of being glider redeploy literally anywhere you want, it's glider redeploy whenever you're hopping off of something like a grind rail, the grind vines, whenever you're going off of zip lines and stuff like that. And like, don't get me wrong, I'm completely fine with that. I'm chilling if you want to go ahead and give us all these special little features and everything like that, but at the same time, we are, in a spot where it's like, okay, the augment before was really good, and now it's like the augment's just very mediocre in a way, right? Because if you really think about it, if you're on a grind vine, right, the only place I could actually see this augment being useful for is when you're on those places like grind vines, where there's a lot more open free space. But if you're on a zip line or something, or like an ascender, for example, all it's doing is being like, hey, those areas where you're guaranteed to not take fall damage when you jump off of them? Well, now you're still not going to take fall damage, but on top of that, you actually get the bonus benefit of being able to redeploy your glider and go sideways a little bit more, right? It just feels so dumbed down in a way, and I know the augment's not out right now, or if it is, it got disabled or something like that, but it is just kind of sad to see how the augments have changed and become this very watered down form when there's a lot of different areas for them to go, right? You don't need augments that are always just like, hey, we're going to make this slight little change right here to make this augment slightly different or anything like that. You know, you don't have to do that. You could just bring back some older augments or whatever, or you could just continue to revamp and make some really cool ones that the community ends up enjoying and liking. And sure, you know, maybe sometimes we'll get some very overpowered augments or something like that, but at the same time, even though it's a very overpowered augment, it is still something that they could even mess around with, right? They could even be like, oh, this is disabled in arena mode, or I guess technically ranked mode now. This is only available in zero build. Imagine that, like a zero build specific augment that you couldn't use in Battle Royale, because we don't have a whole entire unlocking system anymore, right? Instead of an unlocking system, Epic Games is just like, all these are enabled by default, you just find them in the normal loot pool and everything else, like you would any other augment that you already had. So every time you re-roll, if there's a new augment added, it's already viewable for you to actually obtain. And that is something that, you know, would make it, and already kind of makes it so that they can do mode specific augments. Because imagine if there was a situation, right? Like, let's say for example, you manage to go all the way through all the augments and everything, and you unlock one that is a zero build specific augment that gives you like the porta bunker, or like, you know, well, not porta bunker because that's already enabled, but like one of the porta forts or something, right? You know, one of the giant towers with bounce pads and everything else on it. It would be something that it's like, you know, this would make sense for a zero build mode. It is rare because you can't find it in the normal loot pool, but it still switches up the gameplay a little bit and adds for its own unique flair that you're able to actually use and take advantage of. And it's just something that I've been kind of thinking about, because, you know, with the augments we kind of get in the game, I'll re-roll through them multiple times here, and if we can even see the quest or guess augment menu, which it doesn't look like we can when we're actually in creative mode, there's so many times where I'll just be skipping over them because I don't care for 90% of the augments, and I just want the ones that, you know, are like Icy Slide, for example, you know, the movement ones, because especially for heavy ammo, it's like the odds of me finding an explosive repeater, deciding to pick up the explosive repeater, and then going ahead and using it often to make this augment actually useful isn't something that I'm really, you know, too intrigued by. Whereas something like if we had more snipers in the loot pool or something like that, which is going to be an entirely separate video for another time, that would be something that would make me actually want to use that augment more. But it feels like in the current state, they're trying to release augments that make stuff that no one wants to really touch because there isn't really any variety to it at all, and they're trying to make that a main focus for augments this season. I mean, if we really pay attention to it, right, we could have so many unique augments, like even for the kinetic boomerang and stuff like that, right? But instead, all these special opportunities and stuff, they kind of just disable before we get a chance to really have any of that unique customization with it. But of course, I would love to hear in the comments down below, what do you think about the current augments available in the game? What do you think we should be able to get in the near future? And is there any in-between area where you're like, you know, the augments kind of suck or whatever right now, but at the exact same time, you know, it's like, yeah, I understand they're not trying to make anything too overpowered or anything like that, so that they can go ahead and, you know, keep the loot pool a little bit balanced or anything else. But it would be cool to still see some things, like even an augment that makes it so you get cow catchers on vehicles, because we haven't seen cow catchers in the longest time, right? That would be such a small change that they could do that I would pick all the time, right? Any vehicle augment, to be completely honest, I would always pick it because it just is something that I would have fun with, where it just feels like a lot of the augments this season kind of suck. But with that said, I hope you champs and champions enjoyed today's video. Like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't like it, and peace out.